Hey everybody, welcome back. As the old saying goes, somebody has got to do it. I'm the bedbug guy, and today we're going to talk about a unique and weird job in ancient Egypt called the slitter. In order to get into that, we have to talk about mummification briefly, because this relates to mummification. So, mummification has to tie in with how the Egyptians viewed death and the afterlife. And their belief system required that with resurrection in the afterlife, in order to be able to go back and forth between this world and there when you're dead, you had to have a recognizable, preserved body in your tomb or on the planet here, so that when your soul came back, it could recognize the body and it knew that it was in the right place and it actually could go back to it. So in order to do this, they had to figure out, how do you preserve a corpse for a long period of time? How do you keep it from decomposing? And eventually they figured out that if you removed all the moisture, it would not allow the body to decompose. And the way they did this was by packing a body in a salt and baking soda substance called natron, which occurs naturally in a place in Egypt called the Wadi Natrun. And that's where they got it from. So the idea was to turn somebody's body into a big old piece of jerky. So in doing this, it took about 70 days. Eventually, they figured out that they could get a much better result if they removed the high moisture internal organs. And that would be the brain, the lungs, the intestines, and the liver, and kidneys too. They left the heart. They would leave the heart inside the body because that's where they believed your consciousness and soul was. Now, they knew what the brain, they kind of knew that the brain had something to do with controlling your body, but they didn't know that that's where your consciousness necessarily resided. They thought it was in the heart. So the way they took out the brain is they would basically poke through this bone back here, through your nostril, insert a metal hook, something like a wire hanger, scramble it all up, and pour it all out into a bowl. Great, huh? And as far as the internal organs, what they would do is they put a slit about this big on the left side of the body, and basically just big enough for one hand and a blade to get in there and take them out. Those organs would be removed and dried separately, mummified separately, and then they were put into those 4 jars like you saw in King Tut's tomb called a canopic chest. Those had to be with the body to make it a complete body to allow for the resurrection. So they could also, by doing this, pulling that out of the cavity, they could put wrapped up pods of natron into the cavity to help dry it from the inside. They would get a much better result. But they had a problem, a big one. It was illegal, a crime, to desecrate a body, to cut into it. So they needed a way to get around this. So what they came up with is they had one person at the mortuary, probably an intern, and their job was known as the slitter. So what would happen is one of the embalmers would make a mark on the body where that cut needed to go, and then the slitter would come in with the blade, make the cut, and then run, because they immediately chased after him and threw stones at him trying to beat his butt. Like I said, it was a crime. So this was kind of a ceremonial ritual, but they really meant it. That way, the cut was made, the justice was dispensed immediately, and they could move on with the mummification. So, being the slitter, not the greatest job at the mortuary. And you better hope it wasn't a busy day, because you get hit one too many times with a stone, you probably aren't going to show up for work the next day. Anyway, something to think about. If you saw that in the ancient Egyptian one ads and reading the back of the papyrus, would you apply for that if you knew what it was? Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I'll talk to everybody later. Bye-bye now.